So we have some interesting news when it comes to current Impact Wrestling star Moose and his future with the promotion, specifically his status and upcoming contract expiration dates, because it has been reported that Moose is set to become a free agent in June of this year, as his Impact Wrestling contract will expire then. Now, this is according to a report by Fightful Select. It's Fightful's Patreon service, so be sure to subscribe, check that out. Very good service they provide. Now, of course, at the moment, there's no word yet on if the self-proclaimed TNA World Heavyweight Champion will be re-signing with the company or not, but it looks like we just have another Impact Wrestling contract expiration date drama to follow over the course of the next few months. Last year, it was Ethan Page, Taya Valkyrie, Sami Callihan. Now, Moose joins the list of Impact Wrestling wrestlers who potentially could or couldn't sign a contract, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of drama as to if he re-signs or if there are interested parties from WWE, AEW and elsewhere into the services of the current TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Now, previously, there had been some speculation on Moose re-signing for 2 years already with Impact Wrestling, as Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Don Callis noted during the Hard to Kill pay-per-view that Moose was signed to a 2-year contract, which at the time, in terms of the storyline, was try to get Moose to take it easy on AEW World Champion Kenny Omega. Now, Moose was previously announced to signing a 2-year contract in 2019, which led people to believe that Callis' lines at Hard to Kill were in reference to Moose re-signing with the company for another 2 years as of 2021. But that's not the case. I guess that was just for the promo, that was just for the storyline, that was just for the purpose of the vignette backstage at Hard to Kill, because it's not the case, as the contract he signed in 2019 is set to expire this summer, and that is the contract that he's still working off of. Now, Moose is just one of several Impact Wrestling stars that will see their Impact Wrestling deals expire during the first half of this year. We've mentioned them before, names like Willie Mack, Rich Swann is another name. I mean, there is a plethora of other names that names could potentially leave Impact Wrestling in the future. Now, of course, a lot of them are expected to re-sign with Impact Wrestling, but Moose is a big deal when it comes to Impact Wrestling. He signed with Impact in 2016. He's a 2-time Impact Grand Champion. As I mentioned, currently the TNA, self-proclaimed TNA World Heavyweight Champion, but it also looks like potentially we could see an Impact World Championship match or run in his future too. So this one, it's interesting. It's very interesting because if you're not if you're just a casual fan of Impact, if you're not truly familiar with the whole product, if you're not truly familiar with everything when it comes to Impact Wrestling, you might not be fully aware, right? You might not be fully aware of the contract situation. Here on the channel, we mentioned it before. We mentioned it before that Moose's Impact deal expired in 2021. Previously, it was said it was the first quarter. Maybe that was a little bit off. Now they're saying, like Fightful are saying, that it's June of 2021. So he's still got, 6 months, 5-6 months until his contract expires with the company. Should Impact be worried? Of course they should. Of course they should be worried. If 2020 taught them anything, or us anything, about contracts and Impact Wrestling, is that, look, if you run it down and if you don't start early with negotiations, they can expire, and we've seen those reports recently of WWE being very interested in several Impact Wrestling stars, and I'm sure Moose is just another name that they're interested in. That was that report recently that came out, and it said the talent relations and the scouting department of WWE and WWE NXT were sending out feelers to several Impact Wrestling stars trying to find out when their contracts expire. Given that Moose's contract expires in June, I probably think Moose would probably be one of those names. Why wouldn't WWE be interested in him? Look, he's a former NFL player. His work has improved significantly, I think, in the ring over the course of the last couple of years. I think right now, physically, he's in the best shape of his career. There's no doubt about that. You have to look at the Moose that started off in TNA in 2016 and the Moose that is now with Impact in 2021. I mean, it's night and day. It is night and day, especially like physically, promos, in-ring, everything has improved substantially when it comes to Moose over the course of the last 5 years or so. The Moose that came in 2016 in Impact, I don't want to say he was out of shape, because sometimes with the NFL players, especially in sort of defensive tackle positions, they're larger guys. I wouldn't say they're out of shape. They're in NFL shape, and obviously they're in decent shape because they're athletes. But I think Moose was kind of in a similar position. When he came into TNA in 2016, he wasn't in the best shape. The pictures are out there of him not being in the best shape in the world, and now he's lean, he's jacked, he's a giant man, and there is no doubt that the Impact officials really want to keep Moose around. It's evident in the way that they've booked him over the course of the last few months. This is a guy that was it April of last year when he came out as a self-proclaimed TNA World Heavyweight Champion. The original plans, by the way, as well, they were going to do that. There's TNA There's No Place Like Home event, WrestleMania weekend. They were going to do a King of the Mountain ladder match to crown the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Moose was scheduled to win that match. Now, obviously, that event, that promotion was scrapped because of the ongoing COVID pandemic, but plans were in place way back when to give Moose a giant push throughout 2020 and into 2021, and that's what's happened. You know, you've had Moose, as I said, win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, or self-proclaimed TNA World Heavyweight Championship. He's had victories over the likes of Tommy Dreamer, then at Bound for Glory, going into Bound for Glory, he had a big feud with the returning EC3. Now, they had their cinematic match, which personally I wasn't a big fan of whatsoever, but he won that match, so that elevated him to another level. Coming out of Bound for Glory, he then feuded with Willie Mack. The whole purpose of that feud was to eventually get to a feud with Rich Swann, so even though Willie Mack technically beat him at Genesis, Moose came out on top on that feud, and now he's in line for an Impact World Championship opportunity. He's got an Impact World Championship opportunity, and given the way that he's been booked, every feud that he's had since April of 2020, he's come out on top of. It looks to me very likely that Moose is a future Impact World Champion. I think at this point, the only thing that will stop Moose from becoming an Impact World Champion in 2021 is if he leaves the company. If he doesn't decide to re-sign, why would Impact put the title on him if his contract is going to expire in the middle of the year? I think that would be the thing right now. So, do Impact want to re-sign Moose? Absolutely. Absolutely. Of course they do. And if they lose him, which is certainly a possibility, I mean, it's Moose's prerogative. You know, it's up to him whether to sign or not. He will. If he doesn't stay with Impact, there is no doubt in my mind he will get an offer from WWE. And he'll get an offer from AEW. And he knows that. He knows that. And a lot of the time when it comes to contracts, and we spoke about this at length when we've spoken about Ethan Page, when it comes to contracts running down in professional wrestling, it's not a surprise that's how things work. Very rarely do people sign new contracts like 6 months before they expire. If you've let a contract run for only like 6 months left, that's by design most of the time. And a lot of the time when it comes to pro wrestlers, even in this current climate, even in this time where, you know, times are a bit tough, financially times are a bit tough, all that kind of stuff, you know, pro wrestlers, they're independent contractors. By that very nature, they have to work out the best deal possible for themselves and for their families. And sometimes that does mean letting your contract run down and then right at the end, negotiating yourself a better deal because the company and Impact Wrestling is worried about, oh, we can't afford to lose a Moose. We certainly can't afford to lose him to a WWE or an AEW. We need to keep him around. Moose then gets a better deal. Sami Callihan did the same thing. He had his contract run down and eventually, like days before it was set to expire, he signed a new deal with Impact. Other people, Ethan Page, Taya Valkyrie, they haven't signed contracts and they now are free agents and they're expected to go to a WWE or an AEW. So I think the Moose situation will probably be the same. The only frustrating thing, I guess, as a fan, or maybe a good thing as a fan, I don't know how you would want to look at it, is that it's going to be a thing now, I think, that drags on at least until June, until his contract expires later this year. I think if I had to predict right now, if he does re-sign or doesn't re-sign with Impact, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I would lean to, I think he probably will stay with Impact, more so because I just think he's been featured in such a big light right now, and he is getting such a monster push from Impact that, to me, it would make sense for him to stay at least a year or another year. He signed a 2-year deal in 2019. If he signs a 2-year deal now, I think that probably would be a good deal for him. As I mentioned, there is no doubt. I have no doubt in my mind WWE would be interested. AEW would also be interested. What are the benefits of him going to WWE? Frankly, he has the look and the background that WWE is looking for. This is a guy that is a huge guy. He has an NFL background. You know WWE would love to leverage that. He's got a great look. His ability to work in the ring has improved significantly. I'm sure when he left the NFL, there were probably discussions about him going to WWE, and maybe he thought, because Frank, if you're in the NFL and you ring up WWE, say, can I have a tryout? They'll give you one because they love the mainstream crossover. So even in sports, if he wanted to go to WWE, he could have way back when. Instead, he decided, you know what, I'm going to go other places first. I'm going to learn how to wrestle. I'm going to get better. And then eventually I can go to a WWE when I'm ready and when I'm a big star and when I feel like I'm up to snuff. So there's no doubt WWE would want him because of his background, because of his look, because of his promo ability, his work in the ring, all of that stuff. WWE, no doubt in my mind, would want Moose. Would he decide to go there? I mean, he didn't go there when he first transitioned over to wrestling. And maybe that was by design. Maybe that was because he doesn't want to go in the developmental system. Maybe he wants to go straight to Raw or SmackDown. Right now, could Moose go to Raw or SmackDown? I mean, he could. I don't know if he's at that level as to if he justifies that. I mean, sometimes they do make exceptions. Obviously, AJ Styles. Moose is no AJ Styles, but Mike Bennett, they made an exception for him. He went straight to the main roster. That didn't work out well for WWE, but it certainly isn't out of the realms of possibility. I just don't know if I could see Moose being an exception to the rule there. I think they would probably prefer him to go to NXT first. As far as AEW goes, look, AEW, could they do with Moose on the roster? Sure, they could. But I say this about anyone right now going to AEW. Where do you fit in? Can you guarantee you're going to be on TNT every single week? Because unless you're at that top level name star, I can see Moose making a debut on AEW and being around for a month or so, but then I can also see him starting to do matches on AEW Dark. Not that that's a bad thing, but given the position he's in right now in Impact, where he's in main events and he's in contention for world championships, going 1 week on Dynamite, then another week on Dark, and not being sure where you sit on the card, that probably would be an issue. So I think you would look for guarantees if he was going to leave Impact, and I think, frankly, the better guarantee of his position would probably be with WWE if he had to leave Impact. Obviously, I think the desire for Impact to have him to stay is obviously there. Given the way that they've been pushing him over the course of the last 12 months or so, they see big things in him, and he will achieve big things in Impact. The interesting tell of all of this is going to be what happens with him when it comes to the Impact World Championship this year. As I mentioned, that Rich Swann match is going to happen. Before Genesis earlier this year, it was rumoured that it was going to happen. When we said it here on the channel, it's probably going to happen. Now, coming out of Genesis, we know it's going to happen. It's just a case of finding the announcement of if, of when, not if. And if he loses that match, you would probably say, he's probably said to Impact, I'm not going to re-sign. If he wins it, then certainly there will be discussions of, has he re-signed, or they put in the belt on him, so hopefully he does re-sign. You've got to remember, Tessa Blanchard won the Impact World Championship, and she was gone a couple months later, and her contract was going to expire anyway, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that Impact would put the title on someone to try and persuade them to stay too. So there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of spinning plates when it comes to this situation with Moose. Ultimately, the contract expiration is 6 months away, so it's going to be an issue that rumbles on and on. I find it curious that this was reported on now, and it was picked up on now. Usually, this is the game when it comes to wrestling journalism, or the dirt sheets, whatever you want to call them. They get their information from someone, and at the lower levels of things like Impact, it's not people in production, it's not officials, whatever. It's usually the wrestlers themselves. So either Moose or someone very close to Moose has probably said to the guys over there at Fightful Select, no, my contract actually does expire in June. Or also someone that has been negotiating maybe with Moose, or reaching out to Moose, and they got the June response, they've told Fightful Select. So certainly this could be seen, if you want to get really, conspiracy about it, this could be seen as a play by a Moose, or certainly whoever represents Moose, in the sense that maybe he is negotiating with Impact right now, and maybe he does want to get himself a better deal, and if he releases out to the dirt sheets that his contract expires in June, and that alerts a WWE or an AEW, maybe that gets into a bit of a bidding war, and then maybe Impact has to offer him a better deal because of that. There are a lot of different ways to look at this. As of right now, look, he's still with Impact until June. He's still going to be heavily featured in for at least half of this year. They added him to the Hard to Kill main event. Arguably, he was the standout performer in that main event, and that included the Impact World Champion. That included the AEW World Champion. That included Chris Sabin. That included the Good Brothers. So he certainly was a standout in that match, and as I mentioned at the top of the video, this is a guy that has been heavily improving over the course of the last 12 months or so. He's been pushed massively by Impact Wrestling over the course of the last 12 months or so too. He's got a great look. He's got an unbelievable entrance as well. He's a self-proclaimed TNA World Heavyweight Champion. So Impact will do everything in their power, I am sure, to re-sign Moose. And I don't think this one is, a cut and dry situation like Ethan Page. I always felt Ethan Page was going to leave. Moose is a bit like the Ty Valkyrie situation, in that I think it's 50-50. In that there are interested parties everywhere, whether it's staying with Impact or going to WWE or AEW. So certainly it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Moose's contract expiring in June? Do you think he'll re-sign with Impact or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, WWE, AEW, all things pro wrestling here on the channel, so be sure to get involved with the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.